All right, let's just jump right in. We've all been there, right? That little jolt of anxiety when your phone rings and the screen just flashes unknown number. It feels like a totally modern fear, but its roots, they go way, way back. Today we're going to break down exactly what makes that moment so skin-crawlingly terrifying. So, really, what is it about that specific thing that taps into such a deep-seated dread? Is it just that we don't know who's on the other end? Or is there something way more profound going on? We're about to see how this one simple event can become a masterclass in modern horror.
And to really get our heads around this, we're going to use a short, chilling story as our guide. It's a narrative that just perfectly isolates all the key parts of this fear. And believe it or not, it all starts with a single self-imposed rule.
This is the rule our main character, Adam, lives by. And what's so interesting about this is how it immediately sets the stakes. Right away, it tells us that for Adam, an unknown call isn't just some spam or an annoyance. No, it's a real threat, something he's actually built a defense against. And then, of course, the rule is tested. At 3:17 a.m., an hour that just feels fundamentally wrong, his phone shatters what's described as the unnatural, heavy silence of his room. That unknown number blinking on the screen. It's not just a call, it's a violation. It's the first crack in his little fortress of solitude. So this brings us to the first weapon that horror uses against us. Before the technology even really comes into play, the fear preys on something much, much older. The feeling of being utterly and completely alone. For Adam, his isolation isn't a shield. It's actually the perfect breeding ground for terror. And wow, this just perfectly illustrates the point. The first message he gets isn't a threat. It's a question. But this question does something absolutely terrifying. It confirms he's being watched. His decision to ignore the call? It was seen. His solitude has been completely breached. You can see how the story just systematically corners him. He's alone in his room, surrounded by that heavy silence. The only thing connecting him to the outside world, his phone, has now become the source of the threat. And then, physical reality starts to fall apart. A locked door creeps open on its own, proving his safe space is no longer his. And this is where things get really interesting. This brings us to the second weapon, where the story shifts from, a classic ghost story to something uniquely modern. The very tool that should connect us, that should keep us safe, is twisted into the main instrument of terror.
Just look at this breakdown. It shows the betrayal so clearly. A phone is supposed to be predictable, right? But Adam's phone starts behaving in ways that are just wrong. The battery plummets from 60% to 10% in a second. That's not natural. The camera opens by itself. That's a total invasion. It stops being a tool and basically becomes an accomplice to whatever is tormenting him.
Let's just trace this breakdown step by step. First, you get the glitch, a sign that something is fundamentally broken. Then, the invasion of his privacy as the camera flips on. This leads to a terrifying revelation. His phone sees something that he can't. And finally, the impossible becomes real, cementing the phone's role as a hostile entity. And this line changes everything. When Adam finally cracks and breaks his own rule, the voice on the other end tells him he made a mistake. This reframes the entire encounter. It suggests there are rules to this horrifying game, and he just broke them, turning his own technology against himself. And that is the absolute crucial point. Neither of these weapons, isolation or uncanny tech, really works alone. The true horror comes from the synergy, the way the ancient fear of being isolated and hunted meshes perfectly with the modern anxiety of our technology betraying us. This feeling actually has a name. It's called the uncanny valley. We get it when something is almost familiar but just subtly wrong. Think of a robot that looks almost human. Adam's phone isn't just broken. It's acting with a purpose, a logic that defies its design. It's this almost rightness that makes it so much scarier than a simple malfunction. I just look at how fast this all happens. It's an absolutely terrifying downward spiral from simple unease into total horror. At 3:17 a.m., you have the call, the intrusion. Just seconds later, the text comes in, and the psychological games begin. Within minutes, the phone glitches, and the tech itself turns hostile. And in the final moments, with that impossible photo, his entire reality just breaks down. This is the turning point. The screen is no longer a one-way mirror. The act of him looking through his phone has somehow created a connection. By seeing that shadow on his screen, he has given it permission to see him back. The final barrier between the digital threat and his physical self has just been vaporized. So this leads us right to the climax, where the story shows us exactly why this fear is so powerful.
It's all about the complete and total loss of safety, where there's no longer any difference between what's on the screen and what's in the room.
And now the threat crosses that final barrier. It's not just a text on his phone anymore. The message appears in his physical space, literally written on the mirror. The digital haunt has become a physical presence.
And then comes the proof you can't deny. He doesn't see it, he doesn't read it, he hears it. The sound of breathing, right next to his ear. It's intimate, it's inescapable, and it confirms the message on the mirror. The threat is here.
This is it. The ultimate command. It's not a suggestion, it's an order to finally confront the source of the terror. After being psychologically broken down piece by piece, he's now commanded to face the physical reality of his nightmare. And this right here is the final reality-shattering twist. A new photo pops up on his phone, a picture of himself, taken from behind him, inside his own room at that very second. It's the ultimate proof. The phone wasn't just a window for this thing, it was its tool. It was in the room with him all along. The final message isn't even a threat. It's a chilling piece of advice, a taunt. It confirms that this entire nightmare was a consequence of breaking that one simple rule. The whole thing was a lesson, and the caller is promising there will be a next time.
And as the phone rings one last time, that number on the screen, well, it's no longer just a time. It's a symbol. It's a trigger. It represents the exact moment his safe, isolated world was invaded and his trust in reality was destroyed forever.
So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, first, we see how a primal fear like being alone gets amplified in our super-connected world. And that deep trust we put in our technology, turns out that's also a deep vulnerability. That uncanny feeling, the real horror, kicks in when something familiar suddenly becomes hostile. And ultimately, the best horror stories today do exactly this. They blend those ancient fears with our brand new anxieties. And this leaves us with one last thought. We live so much of our lives through these little devices, trusting them completely. But after going through all this, you really have to ask yourself, the next time your screen lights up with that unknown number, what are you going to do?